Just recently, I finished a spoon mule, and I've been playing with relearning how to carve a spoon using the spoon mule, because I'd come up with ways to completely make spoons without using a spoon mule at all, obviously not having one, primarily using a bench or doing stuff in my hands. So, this is what I've built here. And I am going to show you an area that I'm kind of struggling with, and then I'm going to show you the solution I've come up with. It seems to be working really well for me. This is the primary type of spoon that I make, serving spoons. I obviously toy with some different shapes and whatnot. But the area that I'm struggling with primarily with a spoon mule is hollowing the bowl with a bent gouge like this. I'll go ahead and show you real quick what it is I do, or what I did previously to mount a spoon to the bench, and then I'll kind of show you how this doesn't work with just the spoon mule as it is traditionally set up. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you first how I would typically have hollowed a spoon in the past. All right, the way I would have typically hollowed a spoon or secured the blank to the workbench, I would have used a clamp like this. This just fits into a key slot plate that I have mounted on my bench. It's a vice grip style clamp. Press that down, very securely locked in there. I would use the scrap, because I would cut these out on a bandsaw, or I do cut these out on the bandsaw still, to kind of fill the void in the back of the spoon so it's well supported and I can apply a lot of pressure without breaking the blank. I'm going to make a couple of cuts to illustrate what I would do. So just like this. In this case, it's pivoting a little bit under the pressure. I'm going to tighten it up, move it closer to the carving point. And this is, so I'm, obviously standing up. I guess that's not obvious, but, that's what I'm doing. Easily making cuts. In this position, you can get your weight behind the gouge. Your arms really aren't bent very much, if at all, at least in my case. And I found that hollowing the spoon was very easy. So I'm going to kind of bring you over to the spoon mule and show you what I first tried and what the troubles with that were. All right, so I would have had the first time I did this, I had the spoon mounted just like that. These foot braces clamp the spoon up here. And I got my arms up here and carved like this. So now my arms are bent. And after hollowing a complete spoon, I found that I got some tendonitis in my elbows. My elbows hurt. I suppose I didn't develop tendonitis, but that's the type of discomfort I had. So that was a little bit disappointing, and then I immediately started brainstorming. I'm going to go ahead and show you what I came up with, and then we're going to go ahead and make one. And I found this to work quite well, so let's go. Okay, so what we have is I have just this little platform here that I've built. There's some pegs here that when I press on to the bowl of the spoon, it keeps the head from sliding, the bowl from sliding. This piece here just slides into the slot of your spoon mule. And I just have a piece of scrap wood there for now. You could use a peg that the head of your spoon mule is attached with down here at the bottom that would wedge it into place. Eventually I will probably do that, but for now, admittedly, I've just been in the exploratory phase. So once I have everything finalized, yeah, I'll put a peg down there. So I can make cuts with my arms a lot more straightened out. After making a couple of spoons, my elbows didn't get sore at all. I can get most of my body weight behind it. And you know, this kind of just prevents you from having to move off of the spoon mule from surface to surface. And if you want to go carve someplace else, you know, you don't have to figure out how you're going to clamp your work down. You know, if you want to bring your spoon mule with you, you have a quick little platform to secure it with. What I'm using to clamp it is just an Irwin quick grip, little quick release there. On the underside, I have this pulled off, and that is slid into a T-track. I'll show you that in a second here. Again, I'm using the the cutaway from the blank that I made, just so that when I clamp it, I have a better clamping surface there. So what we have here is a piece of 2x6 screwed to the piece that makes up the platform. I've cut this away to give better access for my clamp. These are just holes, half-inch holes drilled into this board here, and I've made a couple so it's adjustable for different spoon bowl sizes. You want to make sure you're making good contact. I initially had stuck 4 on there. You're not going to need 4, just 2, and then you can just move them as needed. So if you have a smaller spoon, you can bring those closer together. Out here, these holes, the reason I stuck that on there is because when you're applying pressure here, I figure you're going to get some reverse pressure going the other way. After experimentation, I've kind of learned that these holes aren't necessary. If you're finding that your spoon is rotating, which I don't think it will, you can add them. And the key there is you can put them in line with the clamp. It's probably ideal that you clamp closer to the center of the clamp, which would mean your holes should be to the outside of that T-track there. It's possible that these aren't new clamps, that this piece will not fit into this T-track. I'll give you the dimensions on mine before I'm all said and done. These are just clamps that I had, so I didn't go out and buy new ones. This is plastic. If you needed to shape your plastic so that it'll fit a T-track, I'm sure you can do that. It's a Dremel tool or a file. So as you see there, see if I can get this at a good angle. You can see how that just slides in there. And that's actually not 100% needed, but I've found it to be very useful, because when you take your clamp loose, it just stays there. And then when you're ready, so you stick your spoon in place, clamp it down, very sturdy. And another point is not putting these holes, if you want to have a different angle, and you can position this clamp wherever you want, it allows you to do that. Whereas with this, you're just kind of always fighting with those holes. So when I make the project here shortly, there's not going to be any holes there. This depth here, I think should be this depth times 2, maybe a little less. You don't want to be clamping right off the nose. You don't really have the same amount of force. So, you know, from that piece of steel there till, you know, maybe a 1/4 inch off the nose of your clamp is how wide this should be times 2. So you can actually clamp this from either side. In this particular one, I don't have the T-track right out to the edge. I figure I'd get caught on it, or I'd less likely to kind of catch my skin on it. In hindsight, I think it's going to be better to bring it out to the edge so you can see it more easily without kind of getting your head underneath. So it'll be easy to reposition your clamp. And it's not that you can't feel for it, but maybe it'll make it a little less. You will fumble around a little less. I'll go ahead and lay this out and show you how I went about making it. So what I'm going to do with the new one is I'm going to make it out of cherry. And the reason I'm going to make it out of cherry is cherry's a little harder than poplar, but still not a really hard wood, so less likely to nick a gouge hitting it with the gouge. So my distance, I like the placement of these T-tracks that I have now. Our distance between them is, or outside to outside, is 9 and 9/16. You could put a screw at the end if you drilled a nice pre-drilled hole. But you know, I'm going to give myself a little bit of breathing room off that hole just to make it a little less likely to split the wood. So I'm going to just go with an 11-inch piece of wood. So I think we can easily, like I say, make it smaller. But the edges here were not in the way previously with my legs, so I don't see it being a problem now. So I'm just going to go with a hair smaller. And yeah, here we go. And then this depth, I'm going to go ahead and talk about that now. So we have 2, and here, let me push that all the way on. I got 2 7/16. I'm going to go with 2 1/4. So the overall size is going to be 4 1/2. So this thickness I'm going to make 4 1/2. And we're just going to go a hair bigger here. Currently we're at 5 1/4. My new piece, it's 5 3/8. That's a little incidental. It doesn't actually matter that much. You just got to have room to make these holes. Don't want any holes too close to the edge. Want to be working mostly in the center of this platform here. All right. And the only reason for cutting this back here is to gain full access with your clamp. So we'll go ahead and lay that out now. $11 inches. 4 1/2 there. So half of 11 inches here is 5 1/2. Let's create our center line there. And this distance is 4 1/2. So for my compass lines are just going to be there for guidelines for drilling these holes here. So half the 4 1/2 is going to be 2 1/4. None of these dimensions are critical. Go ahead and lay those out. Again, we're just going to draw that center line all the way across just for a reference point. It shouldn't actually be necessary. We just need our center point there. This is a really common spoon size for me, about 3 1/2 inches. It doesn't matter too much. Our holes are 1/2 inch holes. Outside diameters of these pieces of tube that I'm going to have on mine are 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark a 3.5 inch circle. Using the ruler here to line up my, 1/2 of 3.5 gives you the circle that you need. Get your 2 points there. And because my pipe is 3/4, you're going to go ahead and make that 3/8 of an inch bigger. That gives us our center point. That's not how I laid that one out, but this will make it a touch easier to give us our center point for our holes. Not really doing any holes on the other side. You do have the option to do so if you like. Kind of designing this only as a push, as in you're not really cutting toward yourself. It will be clamped, so you could make a cut in the opposite directions without pins. You also can turn this thing completely around and work from the opposite direction. So I'm just putting 4 holes on the back side here. So I'm kind of happy with this gauge, or with what I came up with previously. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of quickly ballpark layout. So I'm just going to create on this original one an approximate center line. Work it back to where I was before. I'm just kind of lining that up so I have a center point for the next hole. So I'm going to go ahead and actually tell you what I've got here. 1 3/4 is what I think what we want. That's what I'm going to go with. And I got that on the wrong side, so we want to be up here. This is our whole center point. And I'm just going to create some intersecting lines. Again, this is not really crucial. So this first mark, 1 3/4. So inner circle is where we want that to finalize. You don't actually even need it. My outer circle, I've got it 4 1/4 is the diameter of the outer circle. Size that based on approximately how big you're making your spoons. I'm coming to the outer circle where my center line comes to, and I'm putting the point of my compass, 1 3/4 inch hole, 1 3/4 inch hole. I'm happy with how I match this up, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same on this one. It's going to be in the realm of a 1 inch hole, or distance off the center. That's what I'm going to go with, 1 inch. I'm going to put a little hash mark for that. So both here, so basically our compass point was there at the top of the circle. This is our center line. I just made a mark at 1 inch and 1 inch, and then 1 3/4, and we'll drill 1/2 inch holes. And these will fit in there. And that's all we need. So just 2 of these. I will be using oak. I didn't point that out yet, but that's what I'll be using here. All right, let's go over to the drill press and drill those holes. All right, we're at the drill press here. I'm just going to take a punch here and press it in. When I find that hole or that dimple with my drill bit, it'll just be easier to center my drill bit up where I want it. I haven't mentioned yet this blank here. Call it 1.5 inches, it's 1 7/16. I've set my drill bit depth it's about 3/8 of an inch, not critical. I just want a nice depth of purchase, and I don't want it to be able to go all the way through and fall out the other side. If you get some dust in there, it'll be easy to empty out. I'm using a Forstner bit. This is a carbide Forstner bit. With Forstner bits, you want to make sure you back it out a lot. You can clog the shavings up in that hole enough that it'll be hard for the Forstner bit to come out. So make sure you back it out a lot. You can do this freehand, but doing this on a drill press gives you the exact same depth on every hole. If you don't have a drill press, a drill and a stop collar. So you put a stop collar on it, drill to your stop collar so that the depth of all of these are the same. It's not that critical. And then again, nice and perpendicular. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this to length. I'm gonna create another arc back here just to give a little bit of design to the back side of this. And so we'll rip it there and then cut there. So I'll go ahead and bring this over to the various saws and we'll do that. So, as I stated previously, we're 11 inches here. I am going to put a mark on each end of this board at 5/8 of an inch. I like using a combination square. It just makes it quick for laying this out. That'll be the outside mark of our T-track. Again, not putting it too close to the edge, as that'll help minimize the chances of it splitting out, even if your hole is not sized perfectly, as we are going to pre-drill for the screws. So this is where we're going to go ahead and make a cut, but I'm going to put a partial arc up here. This isn't that critical. Just need to make sure that the entire T-track, and actually that's not even that critical, really only this part of the clamp needs to clear into the full depth. So that's our depth of the clamp right there. I'm just gonna put a little tick mark at the top so I can see that. And we are not gonna have any trouble getting anywhere near that. So just come up with a dimension. You know, if you like the idea of it being completely round at the top for design element, you can do that. So I say, why not? Just erasing that line there to make it less likely as I cut this thing out that I cut too far. So now we're going to go to the bandsaw. We're going to make that cut. We're going to take our miter saw. We're just going to knock those corners off. I'm going to do part of that from the back side. And I really just want that little mark there to fall short of this point here, which is where our T-track is going to be. Same thing on the opposite side. So knock the corner off, don't go overboard there. Just a normal carbide blade on the miter saw. It'll cut just fine. Probably don't want to use your a nice blade. So use an old one that you don't care too much about. This one's pretty dull, so. I haven't mentioned it yet. This T-track is 1 1/4 outside. Your inside slot is 7/8, and the height of the slot is maybe just shy of 1/8. The overall height is looks like just a hair over 1/2 inch, and I'm almost certain I bought this from Peachtree Woodworking. Set this to 45. This is not crucial. We just don't want any sharp edges. We've knocked all those edges out of the way. They're not 100% the same. I don't care. This is going to be the outside edge of our T-track. I don't want those clipped edges to go beyond that T-track, because I want it less likely that I scratch myself on this T-track. I'm going to soften the edges of the T-track with a file, and then we're going to go ahead and drill holes, countersink, pre-drill, and screw it to the cherry. I'm going to go ahead and mark this for the placement of the holes. So this track has a center line mark on it already, so that's handy. Just going to come in 3/4 of an inch from the end. I'm using again an adjustable square, a very fine point magic marker. None of this is crucial. This is a spring-loaded center punch. Keep my drill bit from walking off that point. Go ahead and stick this into my bench vise here. Anything to hold it still is all we need. I'm going to start by drilling with the 1/8 inch bit. I like this one, this countersink, versus this other countersink because it doesn't clog as well, or clog as easily. This is aluminum. Doesn't take too much to clog with it. And it has clogged. Take something pointy, knock that off there. That's why I didn't start with the other countersink, especially if that thing gets clogged at the point. It's really hard to get it unclogged. Only use an impact driver because, well, it fit. The more you unclog it, the faster it'll go. Probably there's some better bits out there, but enlarging it to 3/16. That's the size of the shank of my screw. Use this other bit here to enlarge in the hole. I'm actually going to take a moment and I'm going to put some lubricant on this. Wood Turner's Wonders. This guy claims this stuff will help keep the bits from getting clogged. So I'm going to try that. Make sure that sits all the way in there. Don't drill too deep, or it won't hold as well. Now, it doesn't actually have to hold much, but you don't want it falling out. That one's done. I'm gonna take a little hand plane here, knock off all my sharp edges all the way around. Very simple plane that I use a lot for this type of thing. I'm gonna take a Sloyd knife and get those other edges. Size your drill bit properly for your screw. Drill a pilot hole. Make sure nothing cracks off your screw. I still like using screws that have this little cut tip on there. Even less likely to crack, because it will drill as it goes in. Don't use drywall screws. Use deck screws. General construction screws. Make sure those heads are completely flush so that your clamp doesn't hang up. Get a file in there and take off any burrs that may have been produced from drilling or cutting the T-track. So I've transferred the center line to the back here, drawn 2 parallel lines there, and what that is that's the size of the board that is going to go through the center of the spoon mule. The original or prototype, I put this down onto the spoon mule. On the underside, I drew a line. So this is the depth of the boards that make up the back of my spoon mule, or the top of it that you sit on. So we're going to put a hole in it like that. So I'm just going to drill 2 holes and then chisel that out. So that's my top. I just measured up. Now I know where that hole is. Now I'm going to mark my center point there. This board, it's just dimensional 2x4 lumber, so it's actually a 2x6. I've cut it to 5 inches. I want it to not protrude past any point of the top. I don't need that softened. You'll never hit that. I'm going to take my hand plane here. Quickly knock off any sharp edges. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and mark a center line here. It's 5 inches. 2.5 is the center. This would be for drilling. So I actually want my my slot to start 1/8 inch high, so it will definitively tighten down. I want the whole thing to be 1.5 inches. Somewhat, this is personal preference. The reason is I'm making 3/4 inch holes. I don't really want them to overlap much, and that'll make each hole stay where it should be. It'll drill in the position that I started it from. So with it being a 3/4 inch hole, I'm going to come off 3/8 of an inch off each side to mark the center point of each hole. I'm just using this screw because it's laying on my bench to kind of mark that center line. It'll make it easier to find the hole with, and I'm actually running it in reverse. All right, so that's our center line. So we're going to drill 2 3/4 inch holes. And that way, then I'm going to chisel it square, and our finished product will be dimensional lumber. So easier to make a peg. Using a 3/4 inch Forstner bit. Make sure you back it out repeatedly. Your hole won't blow out the backside in this case. So we're through. I can feel it wiggling a little bit. Holes all the way through. Now we're going to chisel that to a rectangle mortise. I'm going to start by finishing or drawing out where the square is. So you just go to the outside of your circles, draw lines. This doesn't have to be perfect. The peg is going to be oversized, or excuse me, undersized. Make sure it goes in there. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and draw out both sides. So we're going to work this on both sides. Nice thing about this being pine and having a sharp chisel, I'm just pushing that through. I don't need anything, I don't need the bead on it. These outside corners will be a little trickier. So I don't want to work it all the way through from one side, it'll blow out possibly. Now I'm going to work the chisel at somewhat of an angle. I'm trying to cut into the ends here. I'm using a 3/4 inch chisel. It's working okay. I mean, off the end there, if you use anything bigger, obviously 3/4 inch mortise is not gonna work out so well. I'm slightly oversized, so I got a little bit of room to wiggle it back and forth. So I have this clamped to the top. I had marked top there. Just want to make sure that gets put at the right point so our notch is in the right position. I'm going to come in 1.25 inches. There's no magic number here. This is a snappy countersink bit. I'm going to run it all the way down. The reason is I don't want to be able to hit that screw right there with a gouge. I want to make sure it's buried. Number 9, 2.5 inch construction screw. Deck screw will work fine. Take my clamp off. Just gonna tap that just a hair. This isn't actually critical, but why not? This next one, I'm gonna come in 1 5/8 inches. Again, not crucial, just I want to get well away from the edge. So for the length of your dowel, take your dowel, stick it all the way down in there, put a mark. My mark is about 1/16 of an inch long. So we're gonna go with a 1 inch recess depth. I know that the rubber tubing that I have, it's about 1 1/8. So I'm gonna cut this dowel at 2 inches. And all I need is 2 of them. Here's my mark. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this on the bandsaw. Should be a fine tooth blade. If you don't have a bandsaw, use a handsaw. In my case, I am going to sleeve, not this size. I've used up most of what I have in the, so you need a 1/2 inch inside diameter. I've used that up making my previous one. I've got a bunch of this tubing laying around, so I'm going to just show you how to cut it. Measure it. I'm going to have my tubing 1 1/8 so it sticks higher than the wood. That way I don't ever hit the wood with a sharp tool. This tool here works the best that I've tried. What it is just this is particular one is Craftsman. I don't think they do sell stuff at Lowe's. They might even make this. I don't really know, but I've seen other tools like this. You've got a utility blade that clamps into a plier type cutter. To cut, you just line up where you want to cut it and squeeze. If you didn't quite cut it trimmed or square, just kind of trim it up around the edges. Very easy. I don't want any pointy edges, so the top, only the top. I'm just going to take a razor blade and just kind of knock that sharp edge off there. So that's that. So here's the pieces that I just cut. Should probably just take a moment to kind of roll one edge over, just push them against something hard. If you want to use a knife, you can. Not probably necessary. Push that in there. The side you roll is the side that I want down. I just want that a little smaller than the hole I'm sticking it into. I'm not going to stick them all the way on yet until I stick these in the holes. Then press them all the way down. All right. And those will come out, and you can, mine will probably stay in that posture, but you can put them in whatever position you want. That takes care of your pegs. So to size my peg, I took the peg or the wedge that holds my head of my my spoon mule down, and I put a mark at the end there, 1 inch sticking beyond the 2 vertical uprights. I know I need to be longer over here, so what I'm going to do is just going to stick this wedge on there, draw a line, so that mark gets me 1 inch past, so it's easy to get in and out of there. And I'm just going to take a ruler and continue that line to there. Once I have completely ran out up there, I know that I'm beyond the point where it actually makes sense. Actually, we can make it can stick out further, so I'm going to cut it longer. So I want it to be 1 inch and 1 inch on either side. I'll cut it a little long. I can't add to it, but I think I'm going to be cut, back in here someplace. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more. Right now, my crossbars, I might have to be about there. So this part actually doesn't need a wedge. It's just sticking out far enough to make it easy to get in and out. I could have used a thick, wider piece of wood, but I didn't. It's going to hang up in here somewhere, I think. So this was the end that I knew I was going to have to cut some off of. We're sticking out the other side. Rather than an inch, we're sticking out 1.25 inches. I'm going to go ahead and cut this 1.25 inches just to match. It actually worked out surprisingly well right at that line, but better too long. Cut some off later and make it the exact size. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that off, sand the other end nice and smooth, and this will be ready to use. All right, here's the finished product, guys. I can slide that a little bit. I guess I can really tighten it up if I want to, but that's in there pretty good now. And then here's so I don't know if I like this. I might need to eventually trim that shorter. This is my preferred posture of my clamp. When it's on the back side there, it gives me more room. If I'm right here, it could potentially get in the way. So I don't think that's a big deal. You can continue that arc. This was 4.5, another 1/2 inch, even down to 4 inches. It's probably enough. But if you make it long, you can cut it back. clearly simpled down from what it was. Did need those extra holes over here. Obviously I added the ability to clamp it to the spoon mule. I think this is going to work well. And when I went around the other side, just going to move everything down a little bit. There it is. The whole thing. Our mortise area. 2 pieces of T-track that this fit nicely into. This is something that you can easily tweak to size yourself. You may have to tweak your clamps. That clamp can be used from either side. I like the back side a little better. Nothing to hit your tools against. This one's not as tight as the other. That probably means the wood, this piece wasn't warped as much. But with this this peg that we have in there, that's not going anywhere. Thanks for joining me today, guys. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. I hope to see you next time.